Cool, thank you, Sue. Excellent. So thank you very much, Sue and Kate, for inviting me to share our research, and thank you everyone for joining the call. We're really excited to share our, I suppose, our findings from our Voice of Women Working in Sport study. So we ran an online survey back in October last year, and like Sue said, we had over 850 women complete the survey. The long-term hope is to repeat the survey each year to start to track some of the trends that we've seen and essentially hold the industry to account for the improvements in gender equality across the industry. So what we're going to cover today, so we're just going to cover across the kind of key facts from the research that we found, looking at the situation and the need as it stands now. Then we're going to pick out some highs. There are highs, there are a few more lows, but we'll go through those, and then a brief overview of actions, kind of recommended actions for the industry, and then also some advice from women, obviously 2 women within the collective, on how they can thrive in the industry. And as Sue said, there'll be a few bits which will be interactive, mostly through the chat, but if anyone does want to come off of mute and share a story during those times, please do. So the kind of key headline stats from the research, essentially, the situation as it stands was that sport is seen as a rewarding career for women, but actually it's a challenging industry to work in. And what we found was that less than 1% of women felt that there was gender equality in the industry. And actually the average score given by women working in sport for gender equality within the industry was 4.63 out of 10. And then when we looked at their experiences within the industry, a staggering 92% of women face barriers entering the industry, and 91% face blockers during their career development as well. And then when we looked at how that translated into retention of the female workforce across the industry, brilliant that 4 in 10 women working in the industry love it, have no plans to leave. 1 in 10 do plan to leave. And then we've got this big group in the middle, this 5 in 10, who are going to see how the future goes for them. And so whilst the experience of women working in sport is important to everyone, what was quite staggering from this research is actually there's 50% of the women working in the industry don't have maybe that loyal to the industry and could leave the industry if their experiences aren't, I suppose, meeting their needs. So what we hope is that this research shows that there is a need for the industry to take action to improve gender equality across the whole sector. And what we hope is that we can change the narrative from women feeling worn down and frustrated to women feeling rewarded and that they've got a whole host of opportunities for them to explore within the sector and hopefully stay and thrive within the sports sector. So as Sue said, there's a full report that goes with this research, and it is available for free to download, and it is there today, even though the releases are all going out tomorrow. So if you do wish to download a copy for yourself, it's on the Sporting Insights website, and it's in our research store. It is free, but there is a section where it does ask you to fill in your details. It's because it's set up within normally a payment system, but actually what we would like to do is use the information for who's downloading the research to try and secure a sponsor for future years. So actually, if we can collect who is downloading the report, it will help us with our case to secure some funding, which will then help us hopefully do a more in-depth research. So there's kind of 2 reasons for that when you go to that section. So we're just going to start with the highs. So what we found was that sport is a rewarding career for women working in sport. And actually the most common positive word that was reported by women was empowering. And actually they felt very proud and privileged to work in the sector. And what was also very positive was that over half of women were motivated to work in sport to make a difference. So showing it's that they're driven by their kind of a passion and a purpose to work within sport. Obviously, also many women said that they found it an exciting industry to work in, and that was kind of reflected with the 4 in 10 women who kind of love the industry so much they don't plan on leaving the sector anytime soon. So there were a number of real positives within the research for women working in the sector. In contrast, there were also a number of lows and a number of challenges that women faced. So in this section, I've kind of split it up into a bit of a quiz. So there'll be a question and then answers. So what we would like to ask is if people could pop their answers in the chat. It's not a test and there is no prize, but please feel free to pop the answers in there, kind of test your assumptions, and see. Also, it's quite interesting to see whether other women are feeling the same as yourself as we go through. And then at the end, hopefully we'll be able to have a quick discussion just around which of the stats did you find most surprising and which did you find most reassuring. So bear that in mind as we go through the data. So the first question is, what percentage of women felt that the sports industry was biased towards men? So either 0%, a third, 2/3, or all of the women who took part in our research. Just get the chat up. So pop your answers in the chat. Oh, lovely. Glad to see everyone's super keen. That's really good. Cool. So we've got quite a few 2/3, the odd 100%. Okay. So the answer was a third think that the sector is biased towards men. So what we found, so what this chart shows is the light blue section on the left, that's the 33% who thought the sector was biased towards men. So the question people were asked was, as a woman working in sport, where do you feel the industry is for gender equality right now? And 0 was massively biased towards men and 10 was gender equality. So a third of women actually answered 0, 1, 2, or 3 out of 10, which we classified as biased towards men. And what also was very worrying was the other end of the scale. So that green section where it was gender equality, and it was literally 0.5% for each of them, and actually coming out as less than 1% of women think that there is gender equality within the sector, which is a shocking statistic when you see it like that. And also you can see the average, which I mentioned earlier, the 4.63, falls within that kind of neutral dark blue section. And I suppose if we want to take a glimmer of positivity from this slide, there's 16% or so are in that 7 or 8 out of 10, and 17% in that 6. So there's some people who do feel that there is some gender equality there, but it's not. I mean, the ideal and the purpose of Fearless Women is to get us all up to that gender equality end. And these are the things that we want to carry on tracking as we repeat this survey each year, but quite powerful stats on that side. Next question. Here we go. So question number 2. What percentage of women believe they're paid less than men for the same work? So this one is split up into quarters, so 0, 25, 50, or 75%. Oh, don't look about your eyes.
And this is specifically in the sports sector, isn't it, that we're talking
Yes. So I was trying to bring the chat back up. Oh, so a good mix, 50s, 75s, 100, and 25. Okay, go back. So what we found actually was it was just over half, so 51% of women believe they're paid less than men for the same work. And what was really interesting in the report was actually low pay came up as quite a key issue for women working across sport. So one of the key things that was raised, and it's mentioned by the respondent in the green box there, was actually the comparison between salaries within the sports sector to other sectors. Sport was generally offering a lower pay, and that was a challenge for quite a few women. And in fact, 61% said low pay was a barrier to them entering the sports sector, and it was actually the most common barrier to entering when we looked across all of them. So what that shows is low pay is potentially a sector-wide issue, because that's something both men and women will face. But this 51% stat, say, of women believing they're paid less than men, indicates that there could be a gender pay gap within the sector, and it could be across all levels. So that's something we would like to explore further with further research to see is that more of a trend in certain industries or certain levels? But still 51% out of 863 women. So it is a fair sample. So again, there's a very strong finding that came out of our research. Okay, next question. This is a true or false. So male gatekeepers or intimidating men working in sport were less of a barrier for women who were entering the industry in the last 5 years compared to those who entered 10 years ago. So true or false? Just flip back to the chat. Oh, lots of true. Also, lots of true. So people thinking the situation has improved. What our research found was that actually men continue to be a barrier to women in sport. So if I draw your attention to the graph on the left here, so actually male gatekeepers intimidating men were actually a barrier for 32% of women who entered in the last 10 years, of which there are over 300 women within our survey who had been in the industry that long. And then actually those who entered in the last 5 years, also 32% of those had exactly the same barrier. So what that's telling us is that situation hasn't improved. So for the women who were in our research, that's certainly the case, but again, a good sample. So again, not much wiggle room or not much improvement there. And then the other thing to point out is our research only looked at those women who were already working in the industry. We didn't look at those who thought about it or tried to, but didn't get in. But I think it's reasonable to assume that if 32% of those who made it in faced it, it's likely that a good number of those who didn't make it also had the same issue, and potentially that was a reason why they didn't get in. And then once women are within the industry, actually men continue to pose barriers to women progressing their careers. So 37%, so again, a third of women said that male gatekeepers restrict their career. And there's an interesting quote, the bottom one in there, saying that women feel like they're overlooked for roles that they're more than capable for because the recruiters are going for their mates or their friends instead. So again, male, obviously this isn't all men. I'll draw your attention, it's a third, but still a third is a decent percentage of women facing that barrier. And again, what we'd like to do going forward is to look at, is that more prolific in certain sports or certain industries? We weren't able to dig that down to that level in this research, but that's certainly something we'd like to look at going forward. Okay, question number 4 is, what percentage of women admitted that fear of saying no or turning down opportunities that men are taking at work means they compromise on their own work-life balance? Okay. Cool, another real mix of about 50% or 75% seems to be the most common. Okay, so what we found was actually it's about just over half. So 55% of women admitted that fear of saying no or turning down opportunities means they compromise on their own work-life balance. And there were some themes throughout the research saying that actually it was the structure and the culture of workplaces within sport that just didn't flex enough to meet their lifestyle needs and to support their employment and career development. And when we looked into that a bit further, we found that 48% of women said that lack of opportunities due to organizational structure were barriers to them progressing their career, and that 28% said lack of flexibility to meeting their lifestyle needs, so caring responsibilities, duties that they hold within the family, means it's difficult for them to progress their career. And there were some women who shared with us the adverse effects and the negative impact that had on them with their well-being as a result. And several women saying that actually it was the reason why they were looking to leave the industry. So this one quote here from this lady, actually, that it's just the continuous feeling of being worn down and frustrated around inequalities, the fact that it's spoken about but there's no action, and actually the desire to use her skills and energy and expertise somewhere else to make a difference was actually what was pulling her away from the sports industry. So for women, you know, this was having an impact on them, and for some of them, the reason why they were leaving. Okay, last question, I believe. Question number 5. So true or false, more than half of women are worried about imposter syndrome when progressing their career. Oh, almost a full house. Lots and lots of true, some falses. Okay. So answer was true for most women. So 6 in 10 women were worried about imposter syndrome when progressing their career. But what was very interesting was when we then looked at confidence during their current role and their general role, that actually 9 in 10 women were confident to do their current skills, within their current skills, to do their job well. So what this kind of shows is that women are kind of confident and capable enough to work in sport. It's the progressing and the if and when they choose to go up roles or to another role, actually that's when that imposter syndrome is impacting women and preventing them from feeling that they can progress their careers within the sector. And what we also asked women how they overcame their barriers, and there's 2 nice quotes here about women who've overcome them through continued experience, but also trusting in themselves and trusting in others to give them those opportunities to progress, and that with them believing in them helped them to overcome their imposter syndrome challenges. So what I just wanted to do is just to engage you all in a bit of chat, if you wish, either in the chat box or to come off of mute. I just wanted to kind of gauge your reactions to those kind of 5 stats. Were there any in there that are surprising to you, perhaps with the numbers that were attached to them? Or were there some in there that were reassuring to you? Did you think you were in the minority and no one else was experiencing that? So I just wondered what people's general thoughts were to those 5 stats. Does anyone want to come off of mute to share? Or feel free to pop it in the chat. Oh,
Sarah has.
yeah.
Brilliant.
Hi, I suppose from my perspective, it's quite nice to know I'm not the only one. In some ways, as awful as that sounds, but actually really frustrating, because we've been talking about women in sport and gender equality for best part of a decade, and we don't seem to be any closer, which is in some ways just quite depressing, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and I think that stat that showed that no progress between those who are experiencing it as a barrier to enter kind of demonstrates that, and why we want to carry on this research over time, not just have it as a one-off that goes on people's shelves that they don't look at and don't come back to. Thank you for sharing, that's really useful. Kate, over half of women paid less than men. Yeah, it's shocking. I think what we need from that, because that's kind of people's perception, we don't know whether that's actual or fact yet, which is a whole other, I suppose, research or project in itself, but it's a start that that's how people feel, and perhaps that we need to work out whether the challenge is the reality or actually the feeling and how people are valued within their workplace.
I was sorry, I should have put my hand up, shouldn't I? Yeah. I was like Kate, I think there was a 55% of women thinking they paid less than men was probably the most shocking for me of everything in there, just that it was as blatant as that, as what people thought that. But I was on a positive, the fact that 9 in 10 women are confident in their current skills to do their job well, which we kind of know, and we know how many brilliant women we come across in the Women's Sport Collective, so we know that's true every time we're talking to women every day. So that was kind of reassuring but disappointing then in terms of the imposter syndrome. So
yeah. Helen,
did you want to share your point?
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm halfway through my commute, so there's a bit of background noise, but yeah, reassuring yet very disappointing about, I guess, seeing all of these stats kind of and getting those numbers in front of our faces. I had a question regarding the first graph that's on this slide. I just was wondering whether there was a trend in terms of like the different industries in sport, whether like maybe it was more certain industries where people said that they would see and gender equality, and whether there were certain industries that I guess performed less well in those particular statistics.
Yeah, it's something we unfortunately weren't allowed to dig too much into just because of those sample sizes to see whether it was a common thing within certain sectors, but that is something that we would like to focus on for next this year's essentially, which we'll probably do in autumn time, is to be able to do that, in which case we will be kind of tracking the sample size for each segment or each area to try and give us the power to answer that response. I think one of the great things with this research was it was very exploratory. There were assumptions that we had and thoughts that we had, but we didn't quite know what we were going to get out of it. Whereas now we have these, and now we have those hard stats, and that's now where we can dig into it next time and really make sure we track those trends within a deeper level.
I was just going to jump in and follow up there also. Hannah's absolutely right. It's given us the base to explore more. But we also talked about across sectors, but also across sports. So we were saying, actually, if you work in netball, you work in women's sport, you might have a very different opinion if you're in a different sport or a different environment. Yeah. So definitely to be able to do more to cross whatever the words, technical research words are, Hannah will know those, but to correlate, look across and compare would make a big difference moving forwards.
Yeah, and our hope is that some sports will see this, and some of the bigger sports may be interested in doing this with their own sport. So, for example, I've done something very similar with a Premier League football club, where they've actually looked at their own gender equality within their workplace. So the hope is that as the conversations keep going, that more and more sports will take that ownership, and that we can then support them and do those comparisons. But yeah, that is a hope for the future. Kira, you had your hand up.
Hiya, yeah. The other thing that I was wondering, kind of on the same basis of looking at different groups of people, is if you've done this work, and if not, whether it'd be interesting to do, whether there's any difference between the 25% of people who weren't in the Women's Sports Collective and the 75% who are. Yeah. You'd always kind of assume that those in it may be more engaged in the topics and understand a few more things than those not.
Yeah, so that I did do, and there wasn't much difference between them, because I thought that would, mainly I was thinking for Kate and Sue. I was like, could I give them a stat which shows that the Women's Sport Collective is invaluable? And it is. There are some stats in that show that it is, but sadly there wasn't anything around that.
Thank you.
Oh. Okay, well, we'll just move on to the next section, but there are also other times for interaction throughout. So within the report, there is a section of recommended actions that the industry could take. So there's lots of detail within the report, so I'm only going to touch on a few elements now, just because I'm conscious I wanted to cover the actions women can take more in this presentation, but please download the report if you want to look at what the recommendations are for the industry. So we broke it down into three sections, mainly looking around the systems and the support that are on offer for women. And we broke down the support for women entering and the women already working within the industry. So I'm just going to pull out one in each column. So the first one in the blue column was about the systems, and the one I wanted to pull out was the second one. So being open-minded and transparent within recruitment. And what came out of the research was actually the desire and the need for recruiters to be more actively looking at transferable skills, the characteristics and the value that women bring to their existing workforce, which could predominantly be very male dominated or could have a good gender diversity, but each individual brings different value, and actually looking at that rather than where have they worked before? Have they already been working in our sport? Are they coming from another sport, or are they coming from a completely different sector outside of sport? And what value does that bring? I think, you know, it's too easy to attract like for like and you know, stick with the herd that you know, but being more open-minded to think about the value that women can bring, and then also looking at the working conditions that are advertised with the role. There were quite a few comments from women saying that actually that people aren't transparent about whether the role comes with kind of flexible working, or whether there's the option for a job share or hybrid working. That's not very upfront in the job applications, and actually that's something that women need to consider when they're applying. And so there was a need for that to be more common within the recruitment process. And then in the second column, which was looking at women entering the industry, I just wanted to pull out the first one. So increasing the number of women in sport positively engaging. So what we found was that 8 in 10 women who work in sport, who completed our research, do so because they're passionate about sport. And it's actually, so that positive experience, either as a youngster or previously, is what inspired them to take part in sport. I think what it showed was that there's a direct correlation between participation and fans and engagement in sport and the workforce within sport. And I think this kind of diagram displayed it really well. So what we found was, if there are more women and girls enjoying sport, so as I said, as a fan, a participant, or a parent, therefore there's more likely to be more women who will consider working in sport, and therefore more women than working in sport, which then translates to a more diverse workforce, which means sport is better able to appeal to women and girls as participants and fans, which then, if it's better able to appeal to them, more women will have a positive experience, which will then lead to more women working in sport, and the cycle kind of continues. And I think what was interesting from this research is that link was quite strong within the research and the data. And then for the third column, so supporting women working in sport, I wanted to pull out the first one. So the male allies. So as we said before, there were a third of women who, for them, men and male gatekeepers were a blocker. But actually, what we also found in the research was actually that men can be an enabler to women working in sport as well. And there was 44% of women said there aren't enough visible and vocal male allies within the sector, and they would like to see that improved. And what women really valued was men who championed their skills, their strengths, shared their contacts and their kind of knowledge and connections, and worked with women to bring them along on the journey with them as well. So that was quite a real strong thing that came out of the research for more male allies in the sector. And actually, like Sue and I were talking about before the call, saying actually we need to get this report in front of more gender diverse audience, so that men can see actually the role that they can play in helping to improve women's experience working in sport. So the last section I just wanted to focus on was women, advice for women who are working in sport or looking to work in sport. So this highlights the advice that came from the women who completed the research, and some of the pieces of advice in here you may already be doing, some things you might want to start to do more, or some you have maybe hadn't considered before. So I'll whiz through them, and then I want you to have a discussion at the end about which pieces of advice or which actions had you taken that had helped you, and which might you consider trying in the future. So the first one was around the network that you build, and actually there were a lot of open-endeds in this research, and there was a very strong number of them which focused on your network being a powerful tool no matter where you are within your career journey. And actually the quote on the left actually said that actually building an authentic network of meaningful connections, so not just how many people you're connected to on LinkedIn or how many people you know the name of when you're at a big event, actually having a meaningful connection with them. Actually, it's something that women do better than men, and they've seen it within their workplaces. So it's something we can kind of really set as our strength within the industry. And what we meant by kind of meaningful connections was having those, people spoke about having those reciprocal relationships. So giving advice and support and reassurance, as much as taking that when you need it, and really kind of being that having that two-way exchange of support with people. And women spoke about those who did that, had those more authentic relationships with people, and that then they were able to call on them both for kind of day-to-day needs, but also for career progression advice and support, and they found those really valuable. So I think the key point of that is it was a male and female network. It wasn't just obviously Women's Sport Collective, we all know is fantastic, but it's about broadening that network a bit wider for men, women, looking outside of your existing sport or your existing sector. So if you're in media, maybe looking further afield of people who are working in sport for development, or HR looking at finance, just going that bit broader to really diversify your network. The second kind of theme of advice that came out was about not needing to behave like a man or men to succeed in sport, and really understanding the value that you as an individual bring to your workplace. And there was a lot of advice in there about building your reputation on your strengths, and that actually who you are is your best asset, working in sport. And there are a number of comments, especially this one on the right here, which spoke about embracing your kind of nurturing and caring tendencies, which actually gave them a point of difference in a typically male-dominated industry. And that's what's helped them thrive in sport. And actually, you know, there are all different approaches work for different people. And just to say, just because the way a woman potentially approaches something is different to a man doesn't mean that it's wrong. And actually, as this lady demonstrates, there actually were clients out there who preferred her style of working. So you don't always need to change how you work or mirror those who are already in the sector to fit in. So it was about embracing kind of the value you add as your point of difference, and celebrate it and share it within the sector. And the next one was around the kind of mentoring. And what was really, really interesting was that it was 8 in 10 women felt that a mentoring program would help their career progression. So there was quite a big appetite for formal mentoring opportunities. But what actually came out of the advice from women was, yes, those opportunities are great. And if you get the opportunity, do take them. But don't think that that's all there is to actually explore the informal mentoring opportunities that are out there. And there are examples in there of women saying that actually they found real value in those. And there were things around just having curious conversations with people, whether at events or organising coffees. There were examples of people taking on or putting themselves forward to go on new projects that maybe were cross-departmental or cross-team within their workplace to, I suppose, open up their experience and awareness of working with others and seeing how other people worked. And also examples of volunteering, no matter what stage of your career you're at. I mean, there were lots of feedback, lots of advice for those starting out in their career to volunteer lots, get loads of experience, but actually that was also valid for women who were later on in their career path. You know, volunteering could potentially, again, broaden your network from the first point, but also give you opportunities to learn from those who you don't see day in, day out. So the kind of key takeaway from women was to be creative and curious and kind of explore a variety of opportunities for formal and informal networking. And then the last one was around camaraderie with other women working in sport rather than competition. So the key stat around here was actually that 82% of women said that being part of a large network of women working in sport would assist their career. And I think that's something we all, you know, those of us part of the collective know that it is a very supportive environment and somewhere where you can access experience-based advice, that sense of belonging and solidarity and inspiration. And there was a lot of feedback within the research to play an active role within the network, whether that's sharing or commenting on LinkedIn, having those kind of spin-off connections with people out of the networking call. And so, yeah, there were quite a few comments about being brave to embrace the network, because a lot of women said there was, you know, huge value in there of being around women also working within sport and collaborating with them. And those were the kind of key 4 takeaways. I'm hoping to do a bit of work with Sue and Kate looking at the advice, because there were literally hundreds. You think every woman gave me like a spiel of advice. We're hoping to share that with you guys going forward, but that was kind of a top line of the key topics. So what I guess I wanted to do now was just to engage people and, you know, is there any advice in there that you've done yourself and really benefited from, and would you like to share that story with the group? Or is there something in there that you think, oh, I might give that a try? I was just keen to get people's kind of thoughts. So if there's anyone who wants to come off of mute at all to share their thoughts.
Hello, it's Annie. I don't know if you can hear me.
Ah, yes, we can hear you.
Hello. I was just going to say I did a mentoring program with Allianz, who they set it up for anybody who worked within the league, the rugby league that that my team's part of, and I got paired, I guess is the right word, with somebody else who works essentially has 2 jobs like me, which is quite unique. And he's we've continued, even though the mentoring program was only a year, we've continued having a relationship afterwards, and it's just for me been really, really beneficial, because we've got to know each other really, really well, and he really asked me questions that perhaps, you know, peer network or whatever wouldn't necessarily ask, and he keeps me accountable when we discuss things. So I would definitely say that it's not, although I've had mentors within an organisation that I was working for before, I would definitely say, you know, on the face of it, he works in insurance, I work in racing full time, and then over weekend I work in elite sport with Harlequin. So he's similar in that he works in insurance, and then he works in a semi-professional football at the weekends. So we're very different people on paper, but they actually, you know, put us together really well, because we do really get on. So I guess just going into those opportunities with your eyes open, and you know, what on paper wouldn't necessarily be a really fruitful relationship definitely has for me. So I suppose looking for those mentoring opportunities along the way, but also just not being afraid to look at those and think it doesn't necessarily work on paper, but it can, you know, it can elsewhere. So that for me has been really, really useful, and I would you know, recommend it to anyone really.
Yeah, I think I really like that you said they ask you different questions. I think that's really valuable, and that kind of came out in I suppose the advice point number 1 about having that network around having a diverse range of contacts who do see things from a different point of view and ask you those questions, which does make you think about things slightly differently. And within the kind of that informal networking as well, there was when people ticked that they said they wanted formal networking, when we asked them what exact support would you like, a lot of people did just say they just wanted someone to chat with and bounce ideas off of, and that doesn't have to be a formal mentor that you have an agreement with or anything. It can be someone from the Women's Sport Collective, or someone else who works in sport, or someone, if you play sport outside of work, someone within that group who you can just have that conversation with. It's just quite easy to kind of be just tunnel visioned with your slice of the sports world. So that's really interesting, a great example. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Has anyone else had any experience?
Sarah's got her hand up, Hannah, sorry.
Oh, perfect.
So I was just going to say, I think there's a couple of the mentoring bit definitely from my perspective has been amazing, and I think I think that both formal and informal mentoring is really important. But one of the other things reflection on what everyone said here is also that as you get higher up kind of the career ladder in sport, obviously you become quite busy. Quite a lot of people have board positions as well. Actually there is a responsibility on those who have gone up the kind of career ladder, not just to go, well, I'm really busy now, so I don't have time to do it. Because actually to make change, it's going to have to be the people who've got the bigger voice, which often is the CEOs and the senior leaders. And I think I've definitely seen in my career where senior leaders get to the top and then they kind of pull the ladder up with them and go, well, it's not my problem now because I'm where I need to be. So I think actually there's a responsibility on those senior leaders in sport to do more.
Definitely. And there was, within the questions where we asked about barriers and we had male gatekeepers, there was the option to choose female gatekeepers as well. And I can't remember the exact percentage, but it wasn't 0%. So that last point, in some focus on camaraderie rather than competition, there were some people who weren't having that experience within that kind of their settings as well. So really, really important point.
And Sarah, can I follow up there? Have you got any thoughts or advice on what as a sector we can do to encourage? And there are some amazing, really senior women that do give back, but is there anything, because we're looking as Women's Sport Collective, is it about a system? Is it about having some kind of process in place that makes it easier, or stimulates women to give time without feeling you know, it's so overbearing in terms of the time they need to give. Is there anything from your experience, and you've been in so many senior roles, but I guess people do it because it's the right thing to do, but is there anything else you've seen that would help us to maximize that?
I think trying to bring senior leaders together to kind of talk about it. I mean, we've had this conversation offline previously, but bringing senior leaders together to kind of have those conversations about how do we support that next generation. But I actually think one of the biggest tools, apart from it's just the right thing to do, but that won't be a driver for everybody. And what we have to always remember is a lot of people who work in sport are normally quite competitive individuals. So that's not necessarily going to be a driver for everyone, but actually showing that impact that you have. So if you are mentoring someone and they become successful, or if you're part of a program where you've got a group of women who you've had an impact on, who then become more successful, it's about showing that impact. And I think that actually from a psychology point of view is much more beneficial to get people to change behaviors and do things differently, is what impact have you had on that person, whether male or female, it depends on where the impact is, but what impact have you had? So I think it's a number of different parts, which is a lot around looking at how to bring senior leaders together to say, guys, this is your responsibility as well. You've made it to the top, but actually you are also potentially the person stopping the next generation coming through. And secondly, this is the impact you can have in a positive way, and try and encourage them that way. You won't get everyone, just by the nature of the sport industry, you won't get everyone, but I would imagine you get a lot more than you would think.
And there was a really interesting, there was a couple of people who said also in the research, actually almost like asking employers not to think that mentoring had to be the most senior people mentoring others. And there were people who were saying that there may be done entry-level employment for a while, but want to make that step to manager, but don't have that experience. And actually, if they could be mentored by someone and then they mentor someone else, then it helps everyone who's at all levels. And actually, by them being a mentor, even if they're not the most senior people within the industry, they actually will gain experience, which will help them progress their career. So it's around kind of thinking of it from all different perspectives.
I love Jenny's suggestion there. That's definitely something that we have talked about within the Women's Sport Collective, and with Chloe Walton and Steph and others we've worked with, is whether there is a smaller group type format to make that work. And I also love Michelle's comment of remember that not all advice is good advice. Very sound. Annie, do you want to come back?
Hey, so I was just gonna, oh, someone's calling me. I was just gonna say that I don't know if it's possible through the Women's Sport Collective, but if there is leaders that would be willing to give some time, even if they got something back in terms of maybe one of their other senior managers was able to mentor, have a mentor within another company. So almost they felt they were getting something back in that, putting people together that they got something back in terms of one of their other, senior managers or something could be part of the program as well, so that at least they felt like they were getting something in return, like an investment, I guess, for their time.
Excellent. No, absolutely. And it is, watch this space. It is something we can't sort of do research and find that, over 80, what was it? Was it 86?
8 in 10.
Yeah, women want it. And so we do know, we did a pilot actually, was specifically for the collective. We did do a pilot in our first year, and it was just that whole, how much time it takes for a limited number of women. And I think our challenge is that we've now got, 5,300 women. We want to do something that benefits more women than just a cohort of 20 future leaders, what have you. There's obviously some amazing programs in the industry, but we'd like to do something that benefits more in a way. And it's a really interesting, Kira's put about the reverse mentoring, and we've been working on a program with Sky Fresh Perspectives, where we've got 20 odd women. I don't think how many we've got. Kate will tell me how many we've got. Is it 14? 20?
15 pairs.
15 pairs. So where we've paired senior women in the sports sector with senior men in different roles at Sky. So a bit of that reverse mentoring, exploring conversations, having safe conversations around language and all kinds of areas and issues. So that, again, that's something else, which is like another form of, but that not just thinking it's about women mentoring women, it's about recognizing that we need men to be involved in that too. So for us, it stimulated lots of thoughts of how we can help that happen. But I guess from the research point of view, it's also about how employers, it's not just about the Women's Sport Collective, how employers in the sector can help make that happen for the women that work in their organisations too.
Cool. Is there anyone else who had any thoughts? Or I did put down there, and that any extra things or advice, and I know you said we're going to share what we've got with everyone, but if there's anyone on the call who has a golden nugget piece of advice for everyone who wanted to share, you're welcome to share it with the group. Take yourself off mute. No, that's okay. There's no need to. Hopefully, the advice in that we share, the big long list. There'll be people in there, and like Michelle said, not all advice is good advice, and actually think to that, not all advice is right for everyone as well. It's about taking what's right for you, and acting on that. Cool.
I guess the question I have, Hannah, which is actually a question from the Women's Sport Collective, is what we're going to do a bigger session to the whole industry, men, women, employees and employers, is what do people think on the call now, and how do we best encourage people to join us for that and get this information spread
great
long and wide?
Yeah, and that can be stick in the chat, and also email us after and let us know that too, if you putting people on the spot for suggestions. But it'd be really good to get your feedback from this and how we can, as you say, attract more people to come to that session, and what should be. I think once people have seen the full report, also they'll know what more there is in there that we can share too.
Please, Auntie, I just popped that back up again. So that's got my contact details. If you have any thoughts, like Sue said, about how we can broaden our communications with it, but also thoughts on the next report, because like we said, this isn't going to be the only one. So maybe once you've had a chance to digest the actual report, if you think, oh God, I'd really like to know the answer to this, please do drop me a message, because it might be that I can find that out and then share that within the group or on socials, or it might be that we weren't able to work it out this time, but we could try and work it out next time. So please do share your feedback with us.
Vicky, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Are you able to talk? Do you want to just tell us about the activation project? Is that something you applied for on a mentoring program?
Hi Sue, yes of course, no problem. Sorry, my camera is broken, so I do apologise. It's not that I've just not brushed my hair. Yeah, so the activation project was a 6-month programme that I applied for on the recommendation from an old colleague. I was paired up with a mentor that worked with me for 6 sessions, and it was like a celebration session towards the end. And it really is, it can be anything that you want to work on. For me personally, I transitioned from one NGB to another in a different role. So actually it was a really nice experience and opportunity for me to get some guidance and kind of mentorship through that transition period. Also working on me as a leader, so leadership versus management. So that was just a really interesting piece of work that I did. And I guess like what Hannah said, although it was a more formal scheme in terms of some of the models and the interaction with the mentor, it actually turned into quite an informal program as well, in terms of being able to kind of sense check any ideas or talk about any challenges that I may have had in the workspace as well. So yeah, I definitely recommend that if anyone's interested. I think they still have applications open. I know they've been funded for another round through Sport England as well. So yeah, that was completely free to attend.
Excellent. And that's just prompted me to think, actually, one of the things we could definitely do before we end up with a mentoring program from the collective itself, but is to maybe curate the opportunities that are out there across the sector, because I think there are different things in different places, and sometimes it's just finding out and hearing about what's out there, isn't it? Well, I know we get quite a few people applying to us and saying, can anyone tell me how to go and find a mentor, but almost to signpost people to where we know there are opportunities already existing. So that's really useful. Thank you. Hannah, is there any more from you? That's been brilliant.
No, I don't think so. Just please obviously download the report and yeah, let me know if there's any questions, thoughts, feedback.
Lovely. So thank you so much to Hannah. We're finishing a minute early. That's fantastic, isn't it? A couple of minutes early. But that has been really, really valuable. And I think for us, I say tomorrow we'll release the report more widely. The press release is going out too. So anything you can do to give us some feedback, but also to push it out across your organisations and more broadly in the industry, we'd really appreciate, and to get some feedback on it. I must say, it looks, this presentation. It's amazing, Hannah. Really, when you see it all in one place, having worked on it, it looks fantastic. But yeah, so, and questions to Hannah. So we'll share Hannah's details and everything. People also, if they want to follow up and talk in more detail, as we say, just to let people know there's an opportunity to do more of this in depth in sports or with organisations and other companies too moving forward. But thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that's come onto the call today, and we look forward to seeing you at another networking call or session in the weeks ahead. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.